Hallo Pferde, ich habe ja nichts zum Ampfen. Gib mir Werters. Jetzt gib mir Werters. Ja. Das ist eine Videokamera, Pferde. Ist schon
Nimm mal die
gut.
Kamera kurz weg.
Achtung, ich mache das Türli wieder zu. Ja.
Nimm mal die Kamera kurz, nimm mal runter ganz kurz. Ja.
Warte, Pferde, ich mache noch ein Foto von dir. Okay? Du, Pferde, darf ich noch ein Foto machen von dir? Ja, du bist lieb. Ja, Pferde, schau, wir zwei.
Hi, guys. Here I am again, I on air. It's quite some time ago that I have been here. I realize this if I go through my notebook to my notes, and it's quite some pages ago when I wrote down my words, my cues that should help me through this talk. It's part 2. Last time I was talking about my history with immunology. Today I would like to talk about my real life experiences or encounters with viruses. I do this for a lot of reasons, actually. I'm alone in the studio again, so I am with all my technical things here and try to get it done. I want to talk about this topic because every day we are confronted with the pandemic. We are confronted with vaccinations, and we are confronted with viruses, with experts, with media, with opinions, but what is lacking is an open discourse. Yesterday I was watching the news quickly just to have an idea what's going on, and I was a little bit shocked. There is this famous German football player, Joshua Kimmich, who said in public that he doesn't want to have a vaccine. He didn't have corona yet, because he thinks it's not yet tested enough. It feels for him not safe enough. And he got attacked from all over the place by the media and by experts that he is not allowed to say so, because he is a person of public importance and a role model. And as a role model, you should behave according to the rules. This shows, for me, quite clearly that there is no open liberal discourse when it comes to vaccinations and to the pandemic. Moreover, I listened to Ivor Cummins, a very smart person, an engineer who is involved in the topic of nutrition, into the topic of ketogenic diet and chronic illnesses, and he was talking about the figures around corona, and he was also mentioning the death rate, so mortality regarding corona. You can only evaluate it if you count the death mortality per millions of the population. A very sober, interesting talk that made me again, convinced me again that I should raise my topic with viruses. I tried this talk already 3 times and I failed, so I hope this time I succeed to get the circle from that it gets some logic, what I want to say. My virus stories are closely connected also with the development of immunology, and especially with the diagnostics of virus infections. In the early days, when I was young and when I had the so-called the infections children should go through have been in the beginning of the 60s. And I told you last time I had a lot of vaccinations. And back then, I think nobody asked the question what this really is, a vaccine. What did we know about immunology back then? It's interesting because I had, as a child, I was, I think, around 5 or 6 years old, I'm not sure, I contracted measles. Measles is a virus infection. Today we have a vaccine. Measles are a quite stable virus. I want to say only few words about viruses. Viruses are particles and they are not alive. They need an organism like a cell to replicate, to get more. Replication means to make more of themselves. So a virus always has a lipid part, means a part of fat, because otherwise it cannot travel through the bloodstream. It dissolves, I mean, it's like a protection. Then it has a protein part, because if it doesn't have a protein part, this is the spike we are talking about when it comes to corona, to connect to a cell and get into the cell. And then it has a part which is part of the genome machinery, a DNA, little piece of DNA or RNA. And I don't want to go deeper in this. What we are confronted with corona is RNA, and RNA is a very complex machinery within the cell helping the proteins to be built up. And with the vaccines we have today, we are intervening into this RNA machinery. I know that the media and the experts say it's harmless, we don't have any issues with that. I mean, and there we come to Joshua Kimmich again. I think he's right. We cannot judge, assess this yet. I mean, there was then a gynecologist talking about whether it's safe, this vaccine for women in pregnancy. And she said, of course it's safe. We don't have any misbuilt kids until today, babies until today. And how short is our observation period? It's 2 years, not even, so, or 2.5, I'm the figures. But don't take me too serious on the figures. But I think it's far too early to assess this. And it should be possible. For God's sake, we are not in a totalitarian state to talk openly about this topic. We have today, by the way, Austrian National Day. It's a holiday, therefore I wear a white shirt because it's a holiday. And we celebrate this day because it was a day of freedom. The last soldiers left Austria. Austria became neutral. We got a peace treaty. And this meant we have been a free country, became a free country. And where are we today? I ask myself, are we getting into a totalitarian regime where we are not allowed to speak up anymore? That we get taboos over taboo? That we are more and more constrained? That we are, political correctness is suffocating us? So this is a sidetrack to the story, why I think it's so important to speak up. I don't care what kind of opinion one has, but what we have to realize, even if you are vaccinated, you transmit the virus. And there are serious studies that even though you got your vaccine, you may have milder symptoms of the corona infection, but you will not stop transmitting the illness and transmitting the virus to others. So this is a serious concern. And the other is, if you had the coronavirus infection yourself, you are having an immunity that protects you against, not really my word, I like to like protects you against 20 or more different features of the virus itself. And the vaccine, what does the vaccine? It protects you only against this one spike, this protein spike of the SARS-2 virus. So it's worthwhile to discuss this topic. But this was not what I wanted to talk about you today. I had measles. So I was 6 and I had this virus infection. I had a virus infection in another part of my life. This was when I was around 30, or I was exactly 30, the Epstein-Barr-Virus-infection. And I had one in my mid-60s, the coronavirus infection. So I wanted to tell you I remember the measles. I remember the measles, and I'll show you how I remember the measles. Sorry that I leave the camera. I was really not in a very good spot. I was in a dark room, and I was feeling, I don't know, you know, as a kid, I know that everything was red around me, all over the body, and that I had to be in a dark room because my eyes have been so sensitive that I couldn't stand the light. And it took me at least, I think, 2 weeks to recover. And I remember this blanket. This is the blanket my dogs sleep on when they are in the studio. And this was my blanket when I was a child. It's still there. So this is my measles infection, the symbol for my measles infection. Now it's covered by hair, and it's a quite rough thing. It's more like, it feels more like it's a blanket for horses, not for kids. So these were my measles. The virus infection, we have now a vaccine. We know by today that the measles virus is a relatively stable virus, so the vaccines work nicely, let's say like this. Whether we should go through the natural infection or not, this is an open discussion, never ending probably. The next one was my Epstein-Barr-Virus infection, and this has a history because before I got this infection, I got a tonsillectomy because I was suffering during my life a lot of tonsillitis, putrid tonsillitis. I swallowed a lot of antibiotics because of my tonsils. They have been really big. I was scratching the putty off the tonsils when I had the infection. So there was no sensitivity in my throat anymore. I could just stick my finger into the throat, deeply into my throat, without vomiting. So I had this tonsillectomy when I was a little bit in 86. I just had reached my 30s. And I decided to do so because I planned to leave Austria. Back then I was still in Vienna, and to the Middle East. And as we arrogant Westerners, I was told, better you get out your tonsils and take out your teeth, you know, the wisdom teeth, how do they call it in English? I don't know, sorry, to be safe in case something happens over there. I didn't take my teeth out, they are still here. But I got my tonsils out, and I was in the department there in the hospital, and of course you are surrounded by kids, and for a tonsillectomy I was old. So I had this operation done, went home, and after, I don't know, I don't remember how long it took me, but I had always pain in my throat, and this was always red. And I knew as a medical doctor I should be okay by now. But it turned out that I had contracted Epstein-Barr virus infection, an acute one. And I started to develop fever, 40 and more, spikes like this. I didn't know, of course, what I have. because I was coming from Africa. I have been in the refugee camps in Beirut, so I could have contracted a lot of things, from worms to cholera, whatsoever. It was quite uncomfortable situation. I had a friend back then, of course, a doctor. He was in the internal department in a famous hospital in Vienna, and he was coming to see me on a regular basis. And my condition didn't change. So what did he recommend? Come on, girl, you have to go to the hospital. We have to do something about this. First, he started to give me antibiotics intravenously at home, but then he said, we have to check you through this. It's not possible like this. The situation doesn't change. 3 times a day I had these spikes of fever. And then I came to the hospital. I don't like hospitals, you know that. I try to avoid them as far as I can. So I was there, the antibiotics still every other, I think twice a day, high dose. Didn't work, nothing happened. Blood tests, of course. This was the reason why I went to the hospital, to have some results on this one. So in the evening of the day of admission, I got the results, and the young assistant came, piece of paper, you know, as they standing. I was lying in my bed like this, and they have this paper in their hands, and they say, you know, your liver. Your liver looks very bad. I think you have a problem with your liver. And I said, okay, my God, what is this? And you know, your blood count is weird. We don't know what it is. It could be a lymphoma, it could be leukemia, it could be AIDS, it could be a parasite in your liver. I was sitting in my bed, and if I didn't sit in my bed, I would have passed out. I think I was really shocked. So what to do? It was evening. I thought, no, to call somebody, to call home, to call my friend, the physician, the doctor. I thought, no, it doesn't make any sense. Come on, girl, deal with it. You have to manage. It won't change if you start talking with others and tell your story and say, oh my God, I'm so poor, I have this, blah, 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 blah. So I spent the night with myself, watching football on a little TV that I brought from Beirut. And in the morning I was so relaxed, I was cool, and said, okay, whatever it is, I deal with it. Whether it's cancer or parasitosis, whatsoever, I take it as it is. I have to deal with it. And I want to stop all kind of diagnostics that have no consequences for treatment. Then my friend came in the morning, it was the early morning checking patients, and he said, I have an idea. Maybe it's mononucleosis. And we do the test. And mononucleosis is a synonym for Epstein-Barr-Virus-infection. And he took the blood, and the result came. I had Epstein-Barr. So this is not so funny if you are already 30, 31. But I knew as a doctor that I have no chance. There is no treatment. So what did I do? I said, my dear Bert, my dear friend, I take my things and I go home, because whatever, you can't do anything. So I stay home and I try to recover by myself. And so I did. It was a hard time because I was living alone. I was living on the 4th floor without an elevator. I went shopping. I did the household. I took care of myself. And I think it took at least half a year to really get back on track. I lost a lot of weight. I was happy about this, actually. And then I left for the Emirates. And I remember still when I was in the Emirates, sitting at the beach, I was fairly weak, and it took me really a long time to recover. This was my Epstein-Barr virus infection. Now I jump into my 60s. So it's almost 1 year ago that I had the coronavirus infection. And this is interesting because it is such a drama around it, and it's for sure not an infection you should take easy. But it's far from being that dangerous as it is presented to us every day. So I have my tests. I had a positive PCR on the 6th of November last year. So you see, it's almost 1 year ago. I had, just to tell you, my taste changed. I was very tired, but I didn't have fever. I had no cough. And I was doing my work on a very low level and always took a break to lie down again. But I had my positive PCR and I knew it was corona. I had no appetite. My appetite changed in a way that I suddenly had this urge to eat apples and bananas, which I usually don't eat at all. And I took my beast meal always. I take this since 2000 every day, and I think it helped me a lot because virus infections need immunity. And it was after 5 days I took my first stress test to check my condition. This was a workout. Not a very intense one, but at least I tried to find out how I am. And amazingly enough, it was okay. This was 5 days later. I went to the lab to take another test. This was on the 25th of November. I had still a positive PCR. This is the stress system you see here. And I put a lot of stress on my stress system back then, at this time. Then I go back to here. I had this positive PCR on the 26th, cannot see this one probably, it's too far, but a positive PCR still on the 26th of November, and amazingly enough, already a positive antibodies. Woo! This is, Fritz, you will help me with this one. This is my positive antibody test. And then, because I wanted to travel to Cairo, so I had to have a negative PCR. So on the 30th of November, I went to the lab again, and here we go, PCR negative. So I am one of the not so many persons who have good proof of the corona infection and good proof of positive antibodies. And since then, I go regularly for my antibody test all 3 months to have the proof that it's not true that the antibodies disappear after half a year. I also took my Epstein-Barr-Virus antibodies, and they are also still on a measurable level. So this is about my experience with viruses. I mean, it's interesting because I was 31 and I was in far worse shape than today. I think my coronavirus infection was so harmless for me because I'm so fit. I have a very good diet with the ketogenic diet, and I have the beast meal. And trust me, colostrum, it's like an oral vaccination, but it's not only for one spike of a virus, but it's a holistic approach to strengthen immunity. So isn't it amazing? With 65, I experienced a very harmless corona infection, and with 31, I had an Epstein-Barr virus infection that really, really cost me a lot of power. And my immunity, I think back then, was far weaker than my immunity is today. So there is not much more to say about this, actually. I can only tell you that virus infections became very trendy since we have diagnostics. Because the diagnostics of viruses are very, very young. And in 2005, I think, the PCR came into the market, and Western blot immunoassays. It was all in the beginning of 2000. On the other hand, the history of viruses is so old, already around 900 after Christ. A Persian scholar published the measles and the smallpox in a book. And the Chinese, around 1000, between 1000 and 1500, were doing some kind of vaccination. They scratched the pox, skin from the pox, and they blew it into the nostrils to absorb it through the mucosal lining, which is a very good way to immunize. Therefore, yeast milk is so good because you absorb it through the gut, through the mucosal lining, which is having a strong immune system, or is wrapped into an incredible strong immune system, and this supports these. And therefore, it's far better to have vaccines, oral ones, eaten, than vaccines putting by injection, because we have no control what we do when we vaccinate by a not natural pathway. And a needle is not a natural pathway for intake. With viruses, and I think we should have a sober approach. Viruses are looking very similar to receptors on cells. They are particles that can also become part of a living organism, and like this maybe improve our performance, or improve life, or optimize life. And this is something which is never mentioned. We have trillions and trillions of viruses in us, as we have bacteria, and they make us up. And the fusion of all these little particles and organisms at the end created more complex life. So this is what I wanted to say at the end of my talk. I show you my view on the stress system. The stress system is more or less consisting of three main systems that we split up to be able to do the research on them. It's the immune system, the nervous system, and the hormones. And if this balance is destroyed, and these systems cannot keep our organism in balance anymore, then we get sick. And the faster this circle moves, the more we tend to get out of balance and come down with an illness. So what you should do is take care of yourself, eat well, move, and preventive measures are still the best. Yes, this was my virus infections, my stories. I had chickenpox. By the way, yes, I had chickenpox, but only one blister on my back. The doctors hasn't been sure whether this is really chickenpox, but I think it was. So back then, this was also in my I was 7, 8 years old. So this chickenpox. So now this is the end of my story this time. I again plea for breast milk. Don't be suspicious. It's prevention pure, it's a holistic approach, it cannot harm you, and everybody should consider it. And I'm repeating myself now like this for more than 20 years. 20 years, this substance is fascinating me, and I'm standing for it until the very end. And you see, I will have my 66th birthday in November, and I don't feel that old yet. So at the end, Ralph, where are you? Here is my zettel with please like our Ion Air, contribute, be ready to be a guest, come on board. We need open dialogues. We need to take care of our freedom. One more, a very sentimental ending, because it's National Day today, and the white shirt. So we have my Beast Milk World, we have beastmilk.com, we have an online shop, and you can contact us at any time via beastmilk at beastmilk.com. And please, take it serious. The corona pandemic was not the last virus hitting us. So be prepared and don't give up and don't be scared. It's not necessary to be scared. My grandmother always said, you know, you don't die so fast. So we have a strong body if we take care of it. So this was me, Ion Air. Thanks for listening. It's 35 minutes already, so I stop now. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your attention, and take care of yourself. Life is dangerous. We can't do anything about it. We have to deal with it. Bye-bye. Ciao.